Welcome to Nano Skill 1A, Simple REST Service with AWS Code Build. This Nano Skill is based on Nano Skill 1. This Nano Skill comes with 2 scripts and keynote presentation. All provided in GitHub with MIT license. First, the big picture. We are assuming that you have completed a simple REST service, and want to start your simple build process using AWS Code Build. We are going to take your project from the GitHub repository, deploy it to AWS Code Build. The build will be creating Docker images and pushing it to the AWS Elastic Container Registry for storage. Let's look at Step 3, Prerequisites. We need to have Python 3.x and AWS CLI 1.16 installed and configured. Also, AWS user and AWS role need to be set up, as listed here. I am going to execute Step 3 script, to check on prerequisites. Observe that all required software is found. We confirm that Python 3 and AWS CLI 1.16 are installed. Now we need to configure AWS CLI. First, we need to create a user that will execute the CLI commands. I will navigate to the Identity and Access Management Service, then Users. Then I will create a new user hello and check off Programmatic Access options. This will allow the user to use AWS CLI. It is very important during the last step of the add user process to download the user access key ID and secret access key, stored in the CSV file. Keep this file secured. Now I am going to launch the AWS CLI and configure it. As I mentioned before, access key ID and secret access key will come from the download CSV file. Finally, the region and the output format need to be specified. Next, we need to assign specific user permissions that will allow interaction with AWS Codebase and ECR. Select the user again, and add inline policy. Please, make sure that final JSON is configured with IAM, ECR and CodeBuild actions as highlighted. Finally, simply name the inline policy. Let's check if we are making progress. I am going to try listing all ECR repositories. If this command succeeds, the user has access to the ECR. Observe that we have an empty list of repositories. And there is one more thing. We need to add a role that will be running the AWS Code Builds. I will navigate to the Identity and Access Management Service, then Roles. Then I will create a new role. I will call it ECR Code Build Runner role. Make sure you remember what this role name is for later. When creating a new role, I am going to select 2 existing policies right away, AWS Code Build Developer Access and CloudWatch Logs Full Access. First will allow running code build, the second will allow logging of the output, great for debugging. Finally, we still need to add a small inline policy that will allow access to the ECR. Please make sure the action is set as highlighted. The tools are ready. Next, we need to upload our simple REST service project to the GitHub. First, I am going to move the generated project hello to the parent directory, since I have already committed the current directory to a Git repository. Now, let's use GitHub Desktop to create a new repository. Keep in mind that a name of the repository will create a directory for you, or assume a directory with the same name. So I have intentionally left hello out in the local path. Next, I will publish the repository to the GitHub. I will mark it as public. This is required for this Nano Skill to work. Finally, let's click on View on GitHub and check that all of the files have been committed. In order to access the repository by Code Build, we also need to create a personal access token. Navigate to the setting. Developer setting. Add a new personal access token. Give it an appropriate name. Give it access to the public repo. And read access to the repo hook. Generate the key, and make sure you make a copy of it since you won't be able to see it again. Excellent. All the preparations are done. Now we are going to dive into Step 4 and create Elastic Container Repository with a CodeBuild project that will compile, build and pushed the new image into it. The script will add the buildspec.yml file to the project. This will tell CodeBuild how to build our project. This file is expected to be in the root of the project folder. Next, new repository will be created, and the CodeBuild project added. Finally, a webhook will be set up, such that any updates to the GitHub repository will trigger a build event. I am going to execute step 4 script now. Observe the creation of a new repository, hello. Next, we need to specify the personal access token that we have generated in step 3. Following, the URL of the GitHub repository. Now a few things for the AWS side. The region, the name of the build project, and AWS role that will be running CodeBuild. You can see the build project has been created, and webhook has been set up. I am going to log into AWS console and navigate to CodeBuild. Observe that Hello Build project has been created. Here you can also see the Git source, and the webhook setup as well. To trigger a build, I am going to use the GitHub desktop client, to commit the buildspec.yml file. Once I push it to the origin, the build will be triggered. Observe that submitter is GitHub hookshot, and the status in progress. I am going to fast forward to the end. Finally, you can see that our build has succeeded. This is all great, but does the service still work? How can we do a simple test, as we did in the Nano Skill 1, before? AWS provides a quick way to test it out. But first, we are going to jump back into the Elastic Container Repository and copy Hello repository. Now, I am going to navigate to Elastic Container Services. Get started. Scroll to select a custom cluster. Put in the name, hello, paste the repository address. Scroll down and input the port number, that will be mapped to the outside world. Press Update. Now continue. Press Next. We need to make sure the service will be reachable, therefore we need to add application load balancer. Press Next. Let's give this cluster an appropriate name. Hello cluster. Press Next. Review the summary, and press Create to finish. Observe the creation of all necessary components. And I must say, there are 10 things we need to get up and running just for our simple Hello service. Keep in mind that this overhead is necessary for scaling and proper security requirements. I will jump to the end since this takes a few minutes to finish. Now I am going to click on the load balancer link to locate the DNS of the internet-facing host. Let's copy the DNS name. We are going to use it as a parameter for our test script. I am going to run the test text script now and provide the DNS for the load balancer. Observe the tests are passing. All of the source and presentation files can be found at GitHub, see the links below. Please subscribe to leverage other nano skills, and make your time more valuable.